Alright, it's time to move on to the next feature, and that one is of course erosion and sediments. Now I'm going to go to the file menu and import some previously rendered images, but I'm going to load them to stored image first. So what you see here are some images and videos that I produced, and there's a few here that look very similar because they're the same direction, same vantage point, same angle, but different settings for some of the attributes for the erosion. And you see a 3D texture also used. This one here has a more of a canyon look. So I'm going to select this one, load it, and it gets stored. If I click it, it goes right in there. I think it's the same dimension. If I'm not really sure, I can right click here and say scale to fit. Not to the swap image though, I want it here, scale to fit. Okay, so it was actually a slightly different size. Maybe it was bigger than this preview I have by default now. I'm going to load another image though. Let's go load another stored image, and that will be this one. And then I'll go do that again a few more times. Load stored image with the colorful canyon looks here. And I think I have just two more. Load stored image, this one here, and one last one here. Import load to stored image. No, that's a different view. Alright, so I think I have 4 views that I wanted to compare. Well, there's perhaps this one more here. Yeah, let's do this one. Alright, so these are 5 or 4 or something like that. Several renders with slightly different parameters, and I wanted to see if you can tell what's the difference. Certainly this one here has a different color map to give that sediment layers or appearance of stratified rocks. But there's also, you see, this erosion effect, and that's really what we want to focus on this particular tutorial. There's some other places with some erosion. Let's see this one here. Let's see if we can zoom in to this part here, and then we see the comparison here. Very different appearance depending on some of these settings on the coloring. But one thing we want to do is really see the value of adding the erosion. And there's also another thing here, and you see those snow packs. Those are sediments that are made to colorize white or color to the snow color. So you can do without it, and then it's just plain gray, or whatever the rock color is. But you can, and here's another example. But you can also see a little bit of sediments here. Right, there's a little bit of sediment here, a little bit of rock sediments. Basically, it looks like whatever happens in terms of erosion up here falls down to the bottom area and then starts filling up along the hillside when it gets flat. And you can have it also colorized. Here's a good example here. You see this one here is just plain gray. This one has a little bit of whitish. This one has the gray showing still, but also a lot of white. And then more importantly, it's not just flat, it also can potentially go up into the grooves, into those carved areas, the canyons, the creeks, there you can see it up here, the gullies formed by erosion. So the two kind of work together, and that's really what I want to focus on today. So let me load just one more image, and that's the one that's our reference elevation map. I don't remember which one I used for that. Let's see, this was what file here? Canyon 2. So perhaps I had canyon elevation. Yeah, I don't remember which one it was. See, that's the thing about naming conventions. If you don't stick with it, it gets a bit confusing. So I'm going to assume it is this one here. Let's just load this one and put that right in there. And so now let's see. Actually, no, we need to make it go full. Create a new image. There you go. So here we see the full original. Yep, there it is. I think it was 1024 by 1024, or even bigger, 1280 by 1280. Let's see under the image menu for image info. Yeah, 1280 by 1280. So I had this square shaped image, and I'm going to minimize those others now, and we'll just stay with these two here. All right, so we have this one And I want to show how to add the erosion and how to work with some of these sediment deposits. Not only to have them, but also to colorize them. There's two different steps to that, right? So let's start with this. This is our elevation map, and let's quickly check the swap. Yeah, the swap image is plain white. That's the default, and let's just go right into. Let me move this over a little bit here. I'm using the left shift and control key, and then with the left button I can move around. Or I can use this here, this little hand allows you to move it, and this one here, the magnifying glass, allows you to zoom relative to the center of your screen. So there you go. Alright, so let's go and start the 3D designer. That's under transform 3D designer. There you go. And well, not happening much here. What's going on? Oh, maybe the alpha channel is. Yeah, I think when we loaded that image, we also got the alpha channel. Let's go check that. Overlap. Yeah, it's all blocked, so it's not updating any. So that's a good catch. We need to make sure that after loading an image, if we restore it, like after loading one of those images, it also, if it puts the alpha in there, we want to make sure we clear the alpha so that we can actually see anything happening, right? Because if I go back and I didn't have this overlay mode enabled, as I'm painting, nothing happens because it's blocked off. So it's masked off. So you want to make sure that you clear the alpha if nothing's happening, and then that way we can go safely into the transform and 3D designer. There you go. That's what we're expecting to see. All right. So quickly recap a couple of things. We need to get a nice vantage point. We need to increase the elevation a little bit here. Set the lighting. That will help. The lighting will help a lot in recognizing where is the erosion happening. So let's go back to having a little bit of lighting. Let's say the elevation low, the light source far away, a little bit brighter so we can see it. Let's move around to this side, something like that. And then also the lighting from the top, that one will be very far up high and right over us. And so we get a little bit of this. Let's also add the shadows, soft shadows, the ray tracing. That is one of the key things also to recognizing when we do have erosion happening here. All right, so let's see something like this, and perhaps tilt it a little bit. There you go. All right, so maybe also bring it up a little bit so we can tilt it back down and see a little bit more of that. And no need to waste too much of the image space into the background. Let's use as much as possible for the terrain. Okay, and then finally also add a little bit more pre-filtering so it's a nice soft appearance, and reduce the light source just a tad bit. There you go. Okay, alright, so we have our lighting. Now let's add some erosion. Where do we go? Well, there is a more button you need to click here first, and that button will give you additional functionality, and that's also where the erosion is, and the sediment, and there's also some sediment coloring, but only if you enable the creating a texture in the first place. Let's first do without that. So let's start with erosion. And when you see this here, when you click on erosion, the first time you do that, it may take an extra second or so, because it needs to calculate that erosion map. That erosion map you can now actually save. After you've created the erosion map, there is one thing, which is to actually apply it, and you can use a slider to make it more or less of that erosion. But the map itself that's been created, you can store it. There's an option here, store erosion, and when you do that, you see it right here, stored as an erosion map that you can work with, smooth it, blend it, blur it, sharpen it, whiten it. I mean, do all sorts of things to make the erosion even more dramatic, or more what you need it to be. But while we're still in 3D Designer, let's take a closer look at that erosion map and see what else we could do to perhaps make it even more impressive. So there is a lot of erosion happening on some of the flanks here, some others are a little bit less. So the thing you can do, let's zoom in a little bit here. Let's go closer into that scene. All right, so here's that erosion result. And one thing I'd like to do is just play with these parameters. The amount of rainfall, let's give it 2 or 3, and you see there's very little erosion, and that may just be fine if you're trying to show, let's say, a rocky surface in an area that's very arid, very dry rocks, right, with just very little rainfall. So there is not a whole lot of erosion that should show there. Even if it's deep carved, it should be very little of it. Another thing you can do, by the way, while you're looking at this, also you can see how the erosion starts small and then it goes bigger. You can also reverse that, inverse that, and have a little bit a different appearance here on the flatness also. If you look at the flatness 0, it's got a different look here from, let's say, 22. There, with high numbers, one thing that if you have low numbers here, one thing you notice is that there may be some potholes. We see those little individual ones kind of in the flat areas where it has nowhere to actually go away. It just drills that hole and doesn't go anywhere. Well, so keep an eye on that. And actually, let me zoom in a little bit so we can really see this area here. Now I'm going to go, so let's go to 0. There's a lot of potholes. And then I'm going to go in increments of 2 or 3. Still pretty much a large number here, but gradually seems like it's reducing. If I go to 8, yep, and there's fewer of them. So the higher this number is, let's go to 11. There's only a few potholes left. So if you don't like those potholes, what you do is you put that to 22 or 33. There you go. So now it's a nice, clean and lean surface. So that's one parameter to be aware of. It's the flatness threshold. Again, check with invert also to see if you like it better this way or that way. If you take a look at this here, they all seem to be coming down into the deeper parts, and that's exactly what we expect for erosion, to kind of drag the creeks and the river into the valleys and carve the rocks out of that. Another thing we can do, of course, is more rainfall. Let's give it 9. Let's give it really a lot. Let's give it 11. And that's still not really overdoing it. Let's do 22. So, play with these parameters as well. Let's go back down on this one a little bit. 11. And we have a few potholes. Oh, actually a few too many here. No, okay, that's fine. So let's see what else. We have the maximum length, the length of these rivers or creeks or carvings or gullies or whatever you want to call them. So let's say, for instance, let's see if we can find another good spot here. Move around a little bit and see how long these are. Let's say we reduce this to just 2. And so now there's basically nothing happening there, very little erosion. Let's give it 22. And still very little. Let's give it 222. And now we're starting to see a little bit. No, maybe not. Oh, because this one here is probably too dramatic. Here, let's give it down. Okay, so now we're starting to see a little bit. Rainfall 11. So this is very little impact, and this is where you can work with these parameters to give it a little bit more impact here. That's nice. Let's give it a lot. That's a lot of erosion there. Now you can change the erosion intensity here. All right, so all of these work for erosion. And now let's talk about the sediments, right? So when the erosion is happening, the idea is that some of that material has to go somewhere, right? The river washes it out, the creeks wash it out, and it lands in the bottom of the valley or somewhere around there. And so the idea is that we want to have the ability to kind of fill this up with the sediment material. All right, so let's see if we can visualize that right here. So there is a sediment slider and there's an amount slider, and the sediment slider is sort of controlling the spread of all that sediment material. You can see it right there. That's a little bit too bright. Let's go a little bit different here on the brightness there, and maybe just lower the light source so we can see, or change it around a little bit so we can see a little bit more of these as well. Okay, so you can see, there you go. So you can see now how with the sediments, if you have it at 0, there's just no sediments happening. It's all vanished, disappeared. It's magic. but what we really expect to see is a little bit of deposits, and that's where you want to flatten this only a little bit, right? Try and see if do you really need to flat like that, or do you want a little bit less, or do you want really a lot less, but you still want some of it. So now you have a nice, very nice, you know, a touch of sediments here, a little bit of erosion, a little bit of sediments, and then you can refine the amount of erosion there too. Right, so that's a lot of different options, a lot of different visual effects. And then there's this one here, the amount as well, which when you look at this one here, you see the sediments sort of rise up and starting to fill it. So let me zoom into that a little bit so we get a closer look. And then go in. There you go, that's close enough. Let's go back a little bit. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. We have the sediments all together. Right? And if we bring it low, you have the amount of sediment filling those valleys, those cracks, those creeks, those gullies. And so you work with these together. It's kind of sensitive right up here at the very upper end of the slider where it's kind of happening. That's where much of the magic is happening, to fill that or to not fill it. Right? And then you still have the sediments slider to kind of override that or work with that together. Alright, so that's the parameters I wanted to show you. Now there is one more thing, and that's the creating a texture. And the reason I want to mention that is that it also has a sidekick into the sediments, meaning the coloring of the sediments. So first of all, we need to apply a texture. Now be aware that this will modify your swap image. Right now the swap image doesn't have anything. In fact, if we go here to the swap image, it still looks like the same color because it was white. And we have the ability to take the coloring from the map. And of course, because that's an elevation map, it will look darker in the lower parts. But there is also the color of the object, and that one was white, and we can change that to a different color. So that's another way to do it. But much better if you have a variety of colors from the swap image. So this here will actually create a color, an image into the swap image. If we start from the object or from the main image, let's say something like this, and we switch here to creating a texture, this will warn you and remind you that you're about to lose the image that's in the swap image. No problem, we're ready. And so now you see that it's switched over here, taking the color source from the swap image. And you can use these sliders to adjust where the snow reaches down, where the grass or the green parts, the foliage will rise up and cover the rocks, and combine those two things, right? And then of course there's a little bit of smoothing and intensity changes, but most importantly I want to focus on the coloring of the sediments. So check this, we did apply some sediments here, right? We see the green valleys fill up, for instance, right? But maybe we don't want them green, maybe we want it all filled with lots of snow as well. So even though the snow may not be reaching down all the way down to the bottom, maybe we want the sediments to be filled with snow, like as if it's a late winter or like a spring snowpack still there. Even though the snow is gradually receding, there are still some areas filled with snow. And this is how we do that. We see that here. We can say, well, wherever the sediments are, normally they are not colored in a particular way. They are just colored based on the elevation that this system is controlling, right? The elevation and the slope, right? So both of these work together to say what color the sediments would be. But here you can override it. So if you want all that gray material to fill in the rocks, you could say select the rock, and now everything that is sediment is also colored as rock. And that looks very muddy. That's rocky. You can use that to your advantage if you want to show sediment colors or rock colors on the walls, but also on the flat parts that fill it out, right? So it's washed out into that area. Another thing you can do is say, hey, spring has sprung, and we have now a lot of growth everywhere. So it's filled it up, but it's green, right? That's the green valley effect. And then there is also, and then compare back to what it was before. Right? Here you see there's kind of a mix of the two. Right? Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see this better. And you can see here and adjust a little bit the snow, adjust the there you go. So we see a mix of sediments that are green and sediments that are gray, and it's because of the elevation controlling that. But if you do say no, override it to grass everywhere, now you see everything here is green. And then the kicker that I really like a lot is snow. Make it snow color. So now you see it looks like some old packs of snow everywhere. Okay, so we had a day of melting. There's still a bit of new fresh snow at the top, and you can adjust these parameters too. The smoothing amount will make it like if you reduce the smoothing, you'll have just a very clean cut where it goes from rock to snow. No smoothing there. But if you increase this, let's say to 5 or 6, you gradually get a nice amount of smoothing here. And for instance, if you want to make it look very fresh snow, cold winter December snow, a snowstorm just happened, you want that smoothing so it looks flurry, fluffy. It looks like there were snow flurries that kind of fluffed it up, and it's not looking like heavy snow. It's looking like it's very light and dispersed. And so we can still adjust the green also here. But you see, regardless of how high the snow is, up in the mountain or down into the valleys, you can maintain the snowpack in the sediments area. Let's see, one more is the intensity. Let's bring that one down, or let's bring it up. So a lot of different effects you get from that, depending on how you set these parameters. Let's see what we have now. Let's go back a little bit with the Z. There you go. And I hope you like that. This is a lot of different results you get by adjusting just these two sliders here, for instance, right? You got the sediment amount and you got the sediment. Look at that. This is filling the creeks. All these gullies that you have here, right? Look at that. Go down and they're disappearing. And then another thing you can see also is inside this big river, where the flanks are white but only along the edge here. Let's go and zoom into that to get this better, to see this a little bit better. There, a bit more to the left there. So keep an eye on this big river here, and you can see, yeah, you see here how it's and actually I think I can go even closer. There you go. You can see how, as you adjust this part here, let's say you set the sediment there, but then you adjust this part, you can also see how the entire valley flattens up, right? The entire valley is flat here and filled with sediments, or you can reduce it and reduce it some more, and nicely work with these together here. Alright, let's go and adjust the snowpack back down a little bit, like so. So that's really what I wanted to show you, is that there are a couple of controls here that make for very different appearances, very different effects in your final render here, in your map layout. And so let me just play with this a little bit more and see if I can get my final render. I want to make it a deep freeze look like. So one thing you can also do is change the colors here for grass, rock, and snow. And of course, if it's deep freeze, I may not want to see much of the green. Maybe I'm gonna go more of a bluish, icy look. So something like this might be good. Let's try that. And there you go. Now there's also sediment colors themselves that we still need to see. So that's a different topic we covered earlier on how to identify the rock region and do a stratified color combination there and set some layers so we have not just a single gray but variants of that. But so this is where it's gonna all come together quite nicely, and hope this will help you create some similar landscapes. Let's give it a little bit less on the erosion. That's just a little bit too much. There you go. And let's see, flatness. Let's give it a lot of that. That's too much now. This is one of the places where you'll be probably playing a lot with this for a while. There are so many options, so many different results. Let's see, finally, the color of the background. I'm gonna make it kind of a cold winter, whitish, almost whitish, slightly bluish, and then I'm going to also make some fog. So let's add some fog. and some ground fog. So that one we can indicate linear or nonlinear distribution. Let's give it some nonlinear, a little bit of ground fog, won't hurt us. Let's see what else. Here's a very flat high plateau appearance, and here's a very rugged deep canyon. Gosh, there's so many different effects we can create with that. Let's see. Oh, I want to work with the lighting one more time. Changing the lighting, you look at how these gullies and canyons react to that and how it interacts with the light. How some of it becomes very carved out, and some of it, let's see, rainfall, let's do a little bit more, let's do a lot of rainfall, but the gullies are too long here. Let's give it something a bit more reasonable. And that's where we really want to just explore all of these and play with that to get to a nice effect, and then perhaps also add some snow, some clouds. We have a couple of clouds available here. Perhaps these are a little bit too bright. There you go. And then let's see if we can tilt it a little bit. There you go. I would say that's perfect. The next thing I want to do, of course, is animate that. So let me just branch into that on the next tutorial. Alright, thanks for watching. No, actually, not quite done yet. Never done. Famous last words, right? I want to do my final render here, so I'm going to give it the AA level, anti-aliasing to the max. I think 5 is the max. There you go. Don't do the... Oh, we need the pre-filtering to be higher. We have some ridges showing here on our original elevation map. So I'm going to go all the way to the max here, and perhaps lower our vantage point a little bit. That's a little bit too much. Something like that. And then also move it to the side, or move the camera with this one here. Move it to the side. There you go. Alright, final render. Here we go. Okay, that.